Man there trying to stop Drogba getting himself into further trouble.
Oh, it's not a bad ball for Pele on the right side. It's Carlos Alberto. And what a great goal that was! Carlos Alberto.
Maradona just walked away from Huddle then. Maradona, out and Maradona! They're appealing for offside. The ball came back off the foot of Steve Hodge. And Maradona gives Argentina the lead. The England players protesting to the referee.
De halve finale komen. Ik heb opeens zo'n gevoel dat we in de halve finale gaan komen. Met het balbezit voor Frank de Boer. Frank de Boer speelt de bal. Heel goed naar Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp neemt de bal aan. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Dennis Bergkamp. Oh! Frank de Boer speelt de bal naar Dennis Bergkamp. Die neemt de bal feilloos aan. En die schiet de bal erin.
So hello and welcome back to the Scoreless Thriller podcast. I'm Alex, your host again as always, and I'm delighted to be joined for the first time by James Rowe. James, how are you doing today on this Friday?
Thank you very much for the invitation, Alex. Great to be on, and thank you for having me. I'm doing well, thank you.
So we're going to mix up things a little bit from our usual kind of podcasts where we normally do sort of deep dives on specific subjects. We're going to be sort of speaking more contemporary football, and also like the international break has just passed, so we're going to get James's view on some of the results and some of the games from there. But for those who are unfamiliar with your work, James, you've been in Amsterdam for close to 15 years. What has led you to be sort of on this footballing journey in the Netherlands?
Well, first and foremost, hello to everybody who's hearing me for the first time today. My name is James Rowe. I'm originally from London in the UK. As Alex rightly points out, I emigrated to the Netherlands nearly 15 years ago. My football club, Arsenal, brought me to this country. And I saw an opportunity in life which only comes round once, if ever. And you've got to take it with both hands. And I emigrated here and started out on my football writing journey, interviewing professional players and managers, Dutch professional players and managers in their mother tongue. And then different publishers came in for me, and before you know it, you are speaking to the likes of Graham Potter, Danny Cowley, Viv Anderson, Jamie Carragher, and things kind of snowball from there. I recently went over the threshold of 300 interviews since I started out on this journey at all levels of world football, which makes me very proud. And my current publishers are Football CFB as well as the Secret Footballer website. They publish my interviews once a week, and it's great that my interviews of all levels of world football can reach such an audience and educate as well many football fans, both at home and abroad.
Mm-hmm. I often ask guests on the show who was their favorite footballer when they were 10 years old, because for me, I feel like it tells a lot about maybe their perspectives and also where they're coming from on their views on football. But for you, who would that be?
Paul Merson.
Paul Merson.
Paul Merson was my hero when I was a kid. I would even do the drinking celebration, much to the bemusement of my mother. You know,
he's just drinking Ribena.
Yeah, well, I would do this, and I would ask my mother for a Ribena. That's correct. But I would do this when I would score goals, and But he was my hero when I was a kid, and obviously not in a personal life because you're too young to understand any of those things. But he remains one of the greatest Arsenal players I've ever seen.
Yeah,
and he's one shy of 100 goals for the club, scoring some amazing goals, and just a very forthright opinion in this day and age. But that's because he tells the truth, and some Arsenal fans don't like it. But just an amazing footballer, and I remember shooting from distance in the playground and scoring and pretending I'm Paul Merson, and just a wonderful footballer.
Mm-hmm. I've heard you speak on another show, on a podcast, that actually Arsenal was what brought you basically to Amsterdam, isn't that right? That's correct. When I was a late teenager, I made a pact with a then colleague and friend that I would go to a European away game, and this is when you had two group stages in the Champions League, and Arsenal were drawn in a group with Valencia, Roma and Ajax. And my friend said to me at the time, he said, "Where do you want to go?"
I said, I want to go to Rome. He said, you don't want to go to Amsterdam? I said, no, I want to go to Rome. Fate conspired, Alex, where we came here and I saw how much of an impressive city Amsterdam was, and the fact you could learn English speak English before learning Dutch, was a massive advantage, because if you're a young man, of course, you embrace the pressure and the expectation of learning a different language as soon as possible to the best of your ability. But when you are a very young man, if you can give yourself half a chance of being able to speak English in the beginning before learning Dutch, I saw that as a huge advantage. Coupled with the way the city is formed, and the country being very liberal, and it's been by far the greatest decision I've ever made in life, and I believe it will be the best decision I make in my life, regardless of what happens in the future. But I caught the train at a very young age, and I always harboured ambitions of working abroad. Ever since I was a late teenager, I was intrigued about working abroad and the opportunity to speak another language. And you have to work hard, and you have to give it literally everything you've got. But it's worked out well, and lo and behold, it's also helped me on my journey to become a football writer and interviewer as well. So it's really been the best of both worlds in that respect.
Mm-hmm. And what has been some of the sort of cultural or social differences you see in sort of approaches to football in the Netherlands as opposed to what you're used to in Britain? Was there some things that you kind of had to get used to talking to people about football and stuff like this that you'd have to change?
Well, I think it's a great question, a really, really good question, and thanks for that. I'd say the technical ability on the ball and the theory and the training that particularly the youth players receive. Ajax, the club of the city where I live, the youth is the bloodline of the club. When one player leaves, and a door opens for another, and these young players are taught from a very young age to respect their opponents, to respect their environment, their teammates, officials, and their journey to becoming professional footballers. Because I think what a lot of people forget, Alex, is that these professional footballers, they didn't fall out of the sky. A lot of them have forsaken their youth to become a professional footballer. And in the case of the women's game, which I've also covered extensively, a lot of the young women in particular, they were all at the time students studying particular degrees and studying particular modules before they became professional footballers. So it's nice to be aware of that, and also with the small differences between Eredivisie, of course, in the Premier League, where here in the Netherlands, all clubs are obliged to hand in their accounts to the Dutch FA, the KNVB, and they are financially supervised. Where if the KNVB, Dutch FA, find out or suspect that a club is living beyond their means, they can receive sanctions from anything ranging from points deductions, fines, to your professional license being revoked.
Yeah.
And can you imagine if you had such a system in the Premier League, how different things would be?
Well, I mean, hopefully it would have saved some of the clubs. You're thinking of Bury or others going out of business, especially in the Football League.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you mentioned the women's game, because I feel like in England, the women's game is caught up slightly. But what are some of the differences you felt in sort of way people viewed the women's game in Netherlands, where I think England have tried to catch up in recent years?
Again, a very good question. I think with the European Championship win in 2017 really catapulted the pride among the entire nation, and the cross boundaries of people that were maybe not as interested in football. The fact that the Dutch national team of any ilk in football won a major tournament in terms of the top level for the first time since '88. And I've spoken to the likes of Sherida Spitzer, Daniela van der Donk, Jackie Groenen, Jill Roord, Linef Berenstein, who were all part of that. And they were saying that it didn't really hit them until afterwards what they achieved together as a group. Obviously they had the civic receptions, and they were really well looked after, and they were really given all the plaudits that they thoroughly deserved. But they felt as a group, as individuals, what they've achieved is nothing short of extraordinary. And that's really helped the women's game to grow here. Obviously, the national team has gone from strength to strength. Also, the Eredivisie as well. We see Feyenoord making inroads to become as professional as possible. One of the biggest names in the male sense of the Eredivisie. You know, they will have a women's team shortly, and the links to Miedema are already being drawn, where it appears to be a question of time, because Vivian Miedema is also a Feyenoord fan. So it just goes to show the differences between the countries and football ethos in that respect.
Mm-hmm. Have you interviewed Miedema yet, or is that something that's in the works?
That's something in the works, and
yeah.
According to her representatives, there are only 24 hours in a day, and you have to respect that. But I'm also very proud to, you know, half of the team that won that European Championship in 2017 and started that World Cup final. I'm very proud to have interviewed them in their mother tongue. And in the case of Jill Roord and Daniela van der Donk, they're so polite and they've got fantastic personalities. But it's been great to speak to them.
Mm-hmm. And you speak Dutch fluently, but you're also able to interview people in Spanish as well. So that's opened up a lot of doors, I presume, for you. Also.
Absolutely. But I always say, Alex, that each interview has its own rhythm. You know, some players and managers are more talkative than others. You have to let it flow. You have to also do your due diligence and make sure you do your background work, and also not to be afraid to ask different questions that not everybody asks, because I believe that football writers at the top level, I don't know if they're detached. I don't know if they believe they're untouchable. But when I see some football writers asking Mikel Arteta about Aubameyang's haircut, when there's more pressing subjects to be spoken about, I think it just goes to show
it's insulting.
Yes, but you can only do the best with the tools you have at your disposal. And from my case, to start from not a single interview to now being on 309 that have been published since 2016 makes me very proud. But it's important to be very modest and to keep going, and to realise that the story is not about me. It's about the player, it's about the manager, it's about the technical director, it's about the referee or the chairman. You know, everybody has a story to tell.
How do you try and keep those stories fresh, though? Because I imagine if you've done over 300 of them, there can be maybe the sort of, you could have the tendency or also fall into the trap of sort of following a formula of, say, oh, where did you grow up? Who were your heroes when you're young? And then it kind of can be very repetitive. How do you keep those approaches fresh?
A good question. What I try to do, Alex, is I try to look at a player's career and to pinpoint parts of their career which maybe not many people have spoken about. Like, for example, Rule Fox. People watching today may remember Rule Fox from his time at Norwich, Newcastle and Tottenham. I asked him about playing international football for Montserrat, and he was really taken aback. He said, James, he said, when I woke up this morning, he said, never in a million years did I think you'd ask me that question. I said, well, there's so many football writers trying to get into such a small space. It's important to stand out. And obviously being in a minority, being able to interview in foreign languages, it gives you a huge advantage, because you make sure that nothing gets lost in translation, because an awful lot can.
Yeah.
And you also have a responsibility and a duty to make sure you tell the truth. You see a lot of football writers that gloss over certain things, whereas I kind of like to strip it back a little bit and be as honest as possible and also as positive as possible.
And having lived in the Netherlands for almost 15 years, is there a club that has sort of now become close to your heart, or have you tried to not have it affect your biases in the country?
Well, I think obviously living in Amsterdam, you know, Ajax is Amsterdam, Amsterdam is Ajax, as a wise Dutchman once told me many years ago. Obviously, I'm based here. I live in close proximity to the stadium as well. Before the COVID outbreak, I would go to watch games. Obviously, I'm a football writer. I'm neutral, but obviously being an Arsenal fan, people are already talking about a potential Ajax Arsenal Europa League final, and I'm hoping to avoid that at all costs, because obviously Arsenal is my club. I've been supporting the club for more than 30 years, and to attend matches from Amsterdam is a real privilege. But also to cover Ajax for nigh on 15 years in Dutch football and do the post and pre-match press conferences, it would be a scenario where you get an awful lot of work, which you keep you very busy. But I don't think it will get to that point, in all honesty. I believe it will be a Villarreal Ajax final of the Europa League this season.
And how has COVID affected football in the Netherlands? I mean, I presume stadiums are still empty, but like, has there been a lot of sort of financial issues, or how has it sort of affected the game in the country?
Well, they took the decision very quickly to suspend and curtail the league, and then eventually, stop all potential promotion relegation, much to the dismay of Campbell, who were 11 points clear.
Oh, I remember, yeah, of course.
First division.
Yeah.
And I spoke to their manager, Henk de Jong, when he was manager of the Graafschap, and, such a positive character, to receive such a massive blow and to come back from that is testament to them as a club and him as a person. But they made the decisions quite quickly. And yes, the cup final is still being played between Ajax and Vitesse on the 18th without any fans. They tried to be as decisive as possible, but it's just about clubs are still hiring for next season. You see Sam Bokema, a very promising talent at Go Ahead Eagles, signing for AZ Alkmaar on a 5-year deal. So there's still transfers being made ahead of the new season, and players going here, there and everywhere. So it's just about riding out this storm and hopefully moving on when this is all hopefully over in the future. Yeah. And I believe you also speak Spanish. Have you followed the game, been able to go to some games in Spain previously, or do you have a club that you like to look out for in Spain? I do. I am very partial to Spanish football. I do believe it's the best league in the world. I think in terms of quality and depth, to go to San Sebastian to play Real Sociedad, and then go to Valencia and go to Sevilla to play Betis and Sevilla. These particular away days are very taxing and very demanding. And obviously, I've watched Real Madrid a fair few times, which was reaching the zenith really of watching football in the Bernabeu. And I have family connections to Zaragoza in between Madrid and Barcelona. I've watched Zaragoza twice. Beautiful city, quite small, but I was there last November. Really nice city centre. And very historic as well. I watched them twice in La Romareda against Extremadura and Deportivo La Coruña. And every time I go there, even though I'm really well received and well liked by family members and friends, people like to often remind me about Naeem and what happened for the halfway line. Even the radio announcer. At my first ever game watching that club in their own stadium, there was a radio advert, mentioning the goal of Naeem, and you would go for tapas afterwards, and you'd meet somebody new, or you'd be introduced. That'd be like Naeem. Even people that have no affiliation with football, you'll be sitting there eating tapas, and somebody will say, "Oh, Naeem 95." That's what happened. Were you a kid watching that game then, or is it slightly before your? No, I remember it. I remember the season before. That when we won the Cup Winners' Cup, that whole journey was very special. Remains one of the best memories I've got as an Arsenal fan. And I still remember what I said to my mother. I was sitting in our front room, and I said to my mother, I said, "I'm going to go to the kitchen to get a glass of blackcurrant in a minute, because this is going to go to penalties." And then I turned my head, and then you just see the ball looping over David Seaman, and then obviously being a little bit upset and off to bed. Having difficulty getting to sleep and going to work the following morning. And but Arsenal's European record in finals is damaging, to say the least. And we've got an opportunity to win our first European trophy for 27 years this year. I would so dearly love it to happen, but I really can't see it, in all honesty. But I would love to be proved wrong. And so we've just had the international break. Are you someone who's like, because there's a lot of people, especially online, are like, "Oh no, not the international break. Give me back my Premier League football." Or are you someone who's like, "Oh, okay, it was nice for a little bit of a change to the usual run the mill"? I'm very much the second option. It's a world game. Having spoken to players and managers at all continents of the world, it's a world game. Speaking to Sunday Olise today, speaking to Denilson, who was capped by Brazil. International football used to be the highest barometer. I was thinking about, obviously we were going to talk about this today, but World Cup 94, there was only 36 nations attempting to qualify. And now, obviously, times have changed, societies have changed, and countries have changed. But now we have 55, which is a hell of a lot in 27 years, 28 years in terms of qualifying. For me, I'm maybe a little bit old-fashioned, but I'm intrigued by international football. Obviously, the controversy surrounding Qatar is very much very much on point.
Yeah.
And people have some very valid points, and they need to be taken into consideration. But also for me, Alex, just my personal opinion, this is the last World Cup before it gets completely ruined. I can understand progression where a tournament.
Is this because of the 46 teams, or is it
48?
48, okay.
48, and obviously what started out as 4, 8, 16, 24, 32. It now goes to 48, and even as a football fan and a football writer, you would think, oh, that's something you would love. But I look at the sporting element of it, and I think, well, it's all about the personal pride, and it's all about representing your people and representing your country. It's not a general meeting; it's a football tournament, and it used to be, if you didn't qualify, you had the motivation to go on and become better as a generation, or do something
more of an achievement.
Absolutely. And when you see in the African nations, the pride where some of them are in tears during the starting lineup, and national anthems, the same with Brazil and Argentina. And for me, it offers something different. And I think for the people that say it's boring and give me back my Premier League, football, it's a world game, and it's always an opportunity to become even more educated and look further afield as to what's going on in the world. Yeah,
no, for me, I think the thing with the issue with the 48 teams is that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it results where they have groups of 3 at the start, so where you could have a situation where you play 2 games and then your World Cup is over. I mean, that's not really something that you can really prepare. It's not really much of a journey that your fans can go on, and also exactly. you have the issue with, if it's 48 teams, I mean, where can you host it? So I think this one will be in the USA, Canada and Mexico, and if it's spread across 3 countries, it doesn't have that same sort of thing which makes the World Cup great, which is the meeting of different fans from all around the world in these cities, and like these communal experiences, which are it's going to be so dispersed.
Absolutely. In the words of the great Tim Vickery, it's like the United Nations for the common man, which I think is a fantastic phrase. And one thing I would love, I know that Greta Thunberg wouldn't be too happy with what I'm about to say, and obviously I have no power over this, but if I was in charge of FIFA, what I would introduce is pan-world qualifying, where the Ivory Coast come to the Netherlands to play, the Netherlands go to Abidjan, where England go to Santiago, Chile come to London, where Brazil go to play in Warsaw and Poland go to play in Rio de Janeiro. And then you have the 24 to 32 teams left over that are the best in the world. And I think that would really breathe new life into the World Cup, and also create different perspectives as well. But obviously I don't think we'll ever reach that point, unfortunately.
What I think, I mean, would do wonders would, rather than having these little breaks during the season of a couple of weeks in September, a couple of weeks in October or something, is you have your domestic football up until May, and then in June and July have all the qualifiers in that period. So you could have them, say, all the teams meet in one group. So say they're all like one of the European groups, they all meet in Budapest, have all the games there. So you have the fans traveling, but they're not sort of having to spend so much money traveling in all these different places. You have them meeting together. And also, I think it would have improved impact on the quality of international football, in that the teams would be able to spend a bit more time together and build like a bit more team ethos and implement tactics. Whereas before, now we have this little bit of a situation where they'll have 2 training sessions and then they'll play a game. So it's very hard for them to build up some sort of cohesiveness.
Absolutely. There's lots of different options that they could look at, but also the qualifying group, that journey of the away games in particular, when for a fan who's saved for a long time to go to the away trips in Brussels, in Vienna, in Belgrade, it's also a nice break from them, from maybe the daily grind, or something to look forward to think that they're going to go and watch their team play in maybe a country which you don't often get to, maybe Italian, for example, or Vilnius, or something different. So, but I just think it needs to be streamlined, because it's starting to eat itself a little bit, which is, and for something which used to be far and away the biggest barometer, it's that's already an example. It's gone down in the estimation, unfortunately, for many.
A lot of the conversation on Twitter in the past week was dominated by sort of with England playing San Marino, and Gary Lineker put up a tweet about that it was ridiculous that the England had to play this this minnow basically, and that there should be a preliminary qualifying into Europe. But then on the other hand, like the past week saw a lot of really big surprises. I mean, like Ireland, my country, were beaten by Luxembourg, and Georgia almost held Spain to a draw. Malta drew with Slovakia. So how do you think that this should be a preliminary round for Europe for some of these very small countries, or do you think it's better for it's a world game, like you say, and that they should have the opportunity to play the big teams?
I think they should have the opportunity to play the big teams. North Macedonia won in Germany. Who would have expected that? And these younger, I say younger countries, these smaller countries. Yeah. I remember speaking to Maurice Deville, who was captain and played for Luxembourg, and he was saying, when he would come up against France, when he would come up against Spain, even on the home pitch, the stadium would be rocking. All of a sudden you're shaking hands with Carlos Puyol, and you're playing against some excellent footballers, and it's the ability to pit their wits against the Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah. It's also their memories. Careers fly by in the blink of an eye. And these smaller countries, they have improved. I think for the churlish comments to say, how dare they get to play, these are still people that represent their country. There are 209 countries in the world, and everybody's trying to do the best they can. I just think they need to tweak the qualifying, and I think for people to be disingenuous and say, oh, they're playing against postmen or solicitors or candlestick makers. Yes, but that's in the position they find themselves in. But having spoken to players who've represented their country at all levels, the personal pride involved, I don't see people tweeting about the personal pride. Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to players where the pride, where they said in some cases the joy of representing their country is you can't describe it in words. And I think people that like to kind of gloss over that a little bit, this isn't there's progression made. Greece won Euro 2004. Who would have expected that? We've got Portugal won Euro 2016 and had a very tough early 2000s where they looked as if they was in real trouble. So all countries can improve, and it's also about respecting all countries as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think for, if there is a preliminary round, you just end up with a situation where, well, San Marino played 2 games and then their World Cup journey is over. Does nothing for their footballing development. I mean, people are quite churlish, I think, about the Nations League and about how complicated it is. But what it has done is got rid of a lot of the friendlies that everyone hated, and pits countries against, of similar status of themselves, where they can push each other and then also progress that way.
Absolutely. And as well, I believe the people at the associations, Alex, they have a huge responsibility. They have a huge responsibility to select the right manager, and a huge responsibility to, when they would make friendlies, to try and be as open and to try to be as different as possible. Where you would maybe go on a pre-season tour of South America, or you would maybe go and play in different countries. And it's very important. It's very important. And they've got huge roles to play. It's not just a desk job. They've got to be very proactive, and they've got to make sure they make the right decisions. Yeah, no, exactly. But unfortunately, I feel like it's only going one direction. Like, I'm worried, what if the sort of the changes are made to the Champions League, which are, proposed with the Swiss model, which will kind of only further copper fasten the top status of the big clubs, whether this will feed into international football as well. What do you see is the future for European football about this, the competition between the clubs? Well, I hope they have a sense of realization, and furthermore, I hope they have a sense of history. History is vitally important. If I say to you, Alex, who's the biggest club in France, what would you say?
Well, I'd ask on what metric are you saying, the biggest by history or status or clubs? Who is, in your opinion,
if I say to you, who's the biggest club in France?
Well, I know you want me to say PSG, but I think it's Marseille.
But... I don't. I'm asking for your opinion. I'm asking for your opinion.
I've heard Marseille is bigger than PSG regarding the fan status.
Yeah, but obviously your personal opinion, first and foremost, is the most important part of that answer. And I agree. Marseille is the biggest club in France. If we look at England, of course, obviously Manchester United. If we look at Germany, you've also got the likes of Bayern Munich. But when you cut away the opportunity to grow, when you cut away the opportunity to come back, Liverpool won their first league title for 30 years, and it was celebrated by many. So now are they back at the top table? Are the 30 years now forgotten about? Leicester, the story of Leicester, the greatest achievement in modern football. So you're trying to make sure that never happens again. It was an amazing achievement, a truly amazing achievement, which has gone down in history. And, football, as in life, there's full of ups and downs. There are no guarantees. You can't have a closed shop.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful. I think before the last round of the Champions League, where I think the owner of Juventus was, talking about how it's ridiculous how we have to play these small little teams like Lyon who aren't at our commercial value and stuff, and to see them not knocked out by them was very much poetic justice. Well,
I think the key component in such a phrase, such a sentence, Alex, is commercial value. The key component. I've seen Lyon knock Real Madrid out of the Champions League in the Bernabeu when Hugo Lloris was playing for him. And I've never known silence like it. Juventus as well. Lots of Italian fans watching today who know their history. I'm not gonna go into their history, but if you know, then you know about Juventus in the past and specific reputations and how they've clawed their way back. And this isn't a fashion parade. This is world football. This isn't fantasy football. This is real life football. And I think the people in high power positions, they need to be just that little bit more respectful. If you look at Slavia Prague knocking out Rangers, knocking out Leicester, and as an Arsenal fan, if we don't win convincingly in London, they're going to knock us out.
Yeah,
but that's just my personal opinion. But who would have said at the start of the group phase, when they were in a group with Nice and Bayer Leverkusen, that they would go on to reach the quarterfinals? And it just goes to show that in Europe in particular, it's completely unpredictable, and it remains tournament football, Alex. And in tournament football, regardless of level, regardless of stature, there are always surprises.
Yeah, and I feel like the changes, that they want to make, they're not going to the root of the problem. They want to make there to be more competitive, more meaningful games. But if you just expand the group stages more, where they'll have 10 games, people aren't going to be engaged to watch if Real Madrid have won their first 4 games and they're already through. I mean, that's not going to be even for which they want it to be commercially successful. People want, there has to be the element of like a win or lose situation. Has to be an element of threat to the games.
And it reminds me very much of a wonderful quote from Louis van Gaal. He said in the past, he said quite a lot actually, that sport is there to determine a winner. Sport at the end of the day. And I think it's a great quote from him, as one of the finest Dutch managers of his particular generation. And I think that can be lost. Obviously you get lots of experts in this day and age, but football is unpredictable, and that's why we love it, because we don't know what's going to happen in 90 minutes. Nantes beating Paris Saint-Germain in Paris. I don't advocate gambling, but I know that the odds on that particular game, Nantes were priced at 19-1 to win that game. And it just goes to show it was highly unlikely, but they still won that game. And it just goes to show that you never know what's going to happen in football.
So looking ahead to this summer and the Euros, what are you thinking of as England's chances to do well in Euro 2020? And also, how do you think they will, because now there seems to be, after the World Cup in 2018, where it seemed to be a bit of a free hit, where there was not that much pressure on the team, now there is quite a strong consensus that they're in the maybe top 3 or 4 squads in the tournament. How do you think they will kind of react to this kind of change in expectations?
A very good question. I think the schedule that the players have had all over Europe, I think that will be telling. And I think particularly in the Euros, you're going to have a lot of surprises. And I think with tournament football again, I think there's going to be a team that comes out of nowhere. I think Turkey will have a good Euros. I think Austria will have a good Euros. I think there's always tournament football. One thing, obviously, touching on it, obviously, because of your Irish affiliation and being Irish, I find the eulogising of Declan Rice quite strange because he was capped by Ireland, and I can't remember who it was, but they asked an Irish football analyst to give their opinion about Declan Rice's decision, and I can't remember the guy's name. Otherwise, like with the Tim Vickery and Louis van Gaal quote, I would say who it is, but I can't remember who it was. But the quote stuck with me. The guy in question said that Declan Rice has just proved that he's not Irish, because no real Irishman would take such a decision. I also find it strange how Michael Keane, by his own admission, admitted to using the Irish youth international team to get to England. And I really do think they've got to start to sharpen these rules now, because, you know, personal pride comes into it. You think of the money and the time that was invested at youth level for the likes of Grealish, for the likes of Keane and Declan Rice, how many coaches have invested their time, how much the association really harboured and looked after these players. And I think they've got to start to sharpen the rules now, where a player who has the advantage and the privilege to be able to choose which country they play for, I think they need to be aware of the decision they make. Emile Moore, for example, he was capped by Denmark at youth international level and ended up playing for Turkey. So it just goes to show the differences. And I just wanted to touch on that before answering your question. But I think England will, I think potentially maybe second round or quarterfinals, and I think that could well be it. I think there's still a lot of work to be done, and I still don't think that Southgate knows his best 11, in my opinion.
But quarterfinals would be quite a disappointing tournament, given the expectations seem to be around the team. Who do you view as the sort of, I mean, obviously France, after winning the World Cup, are likely to be favourites, but who else is in that sort of second tier below them?
I think Portugal will have a very good Euros, not just because of Cristiano, but I think Fernandes, Ruben Diaz as well is an excellent player. I've rated him since his time at Braga, and I think Manchester City signed an excellent player. I think France and Portugal, I think that there'll be a surprise, as there always is. You know, you go back into history with Greece at Euro 2004, with Euro 2008, with Turkey, with Euro 2012, with Italy, for example. There'll be a surprise for sure, but I think the winner will come from France or Portugal.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the subject you brought up there with the Declan Rice and the international thing, because this is like, people do migrate now, so I don't and migration is a thing. So I definitely wouldn't want to like criticize a player who's got like mixed heritage and maybe has like questions about who he wants to represent. But I think for myself and a lot of Irish people was the way that Declan Rice tried to sort of rewrite the history afterwards. You know, after he started joining up for the England camp, it was like, oh, I flirted with the idea for playing for Ireland. But I mean, he was our young player of the year in 2019, I think. You know, he had played 3 caps and been very bullish about, you know, how proud he was to represent I think it was from his grandmother or one of his grandparents, you know, represent the country where they had come from and stuff. And, you know, I think FIFA are even loosening the rules even further regarding, you know, eligibility status. And, you know, for me, I think like I say, you know, people, for somebody of mixed heritage, it must be a very difficult question to try and decide where it comes from. But I mean, also there needs to be a kind of realism about like where we, as a country in Ireland, where we focus our efforts. And in previous years, I think there's been we haven't really in Ireland put a lot of money into youth development and stuff. And it's been a very kind of easy solution is let's try and get some guys developed through English football into the Irish youth sides, and then that's a kind of shortcut. But then we kind of do quite often see how it comes back to bite us.
Absolutely, and I stand by your comments. I also agree with your comments, but I think what I'm trying to say is that you maybe being a bit of an old romantic here, Alex, but all you would expect is that somebody chooses with their heart. That's all you would expect. That's all you're asking for, is that you choose with your heart, and because that's what international football is. International football, international sport is the best of what one country has got against the best of another. And when you start to blur the lines, it kind of loses a little bit of meaning, in my opinion. To touch on here in the Netherlands with the Moroccan players who have chosen Morocco, for example, Hakim Ziyech. Hakim Ziyech received untold criticism about why he did not choose the Netherlands. People even went as far as to say that they believed that he had a moral obligation to choose the Netherlands. He was asked by a reporter, he said, can I ask why you've chosen Morocco? And he said, well, I have an affiliation with the country. My father is buried there. I want to play for Morocco. Yeah. And once he said that, nobody questioned him ever again. But there was no need to pillar him in that way, but they were very critical. And also Mohamed Itaran, who plays for PSV, he was badgered into choosing the Netherlands. Are you going to choose the Netherlands above Morocco? Are you going to choose the Netherlands above Morocco? And he just suffered a loss where his father had passed away. And he was literally saying to some people, you need to give me a bit of time and you need to give me a bit of space. He subsequently chose the Netherlands, Alex, and he's been overlooked at under 21 level. So one of the brightest talents in the country is now been sidetracked at international level, and he must think to himself, did he make the right decision? So although I concur with your comments, and I fully agree with you, I think that it's important to make players aware choosing with your heart is the most important thing. It's not about financial gain. It's not about superstardom, because you're representing your country, you're representing your people, and it's a very, very important part of any international sport.
I have a question from Dr. Grant Campbell, who wants to know how does James solve a problem like the Dutch international team? So how do you want to tackle that one?
Well, first and foremost, I would love the job, first and foremost, but I don't think I'm going to get it. It's very strange how Ronald Koeman going back, he had a clause in his contract, Alex, which allowed him to go to FC Barcelona if they come in for him. Yeah. And they did. And so, his dream to manage Barcelona, which he's had since he started out managing Vitesse here in the Netherlands, he had that dream. And there was rumours that the Dutch FA didn't want to pay the buyout clause of Peter Bos at Bayer Leverkusen, who's now since completely free. They chose Frank de Boer, but having been relieved of his duties at Inter Milan, Crystal Palace, and at Atlanta United,
he hasn't got the best CV.
He hasn't got the best CV. And how do you go into a dressing room of a multi-generational dressing room when you haven't really done it as much as you could at club level? I think he was given the job purely on the status as a Dutch international player, accruing, I believe, 112 caps for the national team and playing in multiple World Cups and European Championships. But they struggled against Turkey. They had good results, of course, against Latvia and Gibraltar. But the acid test will be the away days in Oslo and Riga, and also the home games against Norway and Turkey. I think because the group winner goes through to the World Cup, and the runner-up goes through to a semi-final, final path. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult to qualify from that. And I think there'll be many countries, that will be disappointed if they do end up second in their group.
How about at the Euros? Should teams be fearful of them, or they're a team that they can knock off?
I think that I think there was a little bit of an over-exaggeration. To say that they were back was a little bit premature. Yes, it was great for them to qualify for a major tournament after missing out on Euro 2016 and a World Cup in 2018. But to give viewers today a little bit of background information, the arrogance on both qualifying campaigns was beyond disbelief. Even if you go back to the qualifying campaign of Euro 2016 against the Czech Republic, Iceland, Turkey, they were literally, even when they were arranging the fixtures, they came in with a certain arrogance of, we don't really need to do this, we're going to be all right. And then the shock of not qualifying for Euro 2016, thinking, it's just a one-off, we're going to be all right. But they was in a group with France and Sweden, and again fell short. And also problems at board level. yes, it was great for them to qualify again, but they were never back completely, because people need to understand that the likes of Johan Cruyff, the likes of Frank Rijkaard and Ruud Gullit and Dennis Bergkamp and Mark Overmars and Nistelrooy, the characteristics that these players have and the winning mentality that these players had, among many others, coupled with the managers such as Louis van Gaal, such as Bert van Marwijk, and Marco van Basten, of course. These players and managers had different characteristics to the players and managers players and manager that they have now, and I think that's proving very difficult. You know, Steven Berghuis was deemed not good enough to play for Watford, but is yet still playing for the national team, although he has improved and become a big part of Feyenoord's improvement under Advocaat. But it's just strange times at the moment, and there still is a long way to go. I think they'll get out of the group, but I think maybe the last 16 stage will be where the story ends for the Netherlands.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today on the podcast, James. What should people, if they want to check out your work, and if you want to plug any articles coming out in the future, what should they look out for? Who's kind of on your radar for interviews next?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for the invitation. I've really enjoyed the podcast. I hope you and the viewers have too. Viewers can follow my work and listeners can follow my work on @JamesRoweNL. There, all my interviews are posted by Football CFB and also the Secret Footballer website. Also, podcasts related to club football and Arsenal and international football too. Upcoming interviews, it really is a plethora of fantastic stories from all levels of world football. You know, the likes of Trevor Steven, who played for Marseille, Glasgow Rangers, and also went to 2 World Cups with England. You know, Sunday Elise, who people will know of Nigeria. Also from the women's football, the likes of Stephanie Roach, who was capped by the Republic of Ireland.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Also as well, Fabio Ivan Barros, who coaches the women's team of Boavista, and as well as stories from Sweden, from France, from the Netherlands, of course. So there really are some interesting stories coming up, and a lot of depth as well, because it's important to realise it's a world game, and I always enjoy them, and it's nice to send them out into the world and for them to be so well received. So be very interesting to see what's coming up in future, and I hope people will enjoy the interviews as much as I enjoyed making them.
Oh, it sounds great, and I really enjoy the sort of variety of characters. Right, it's not a particular niche. You know, there's something for everyone.
Absolutely, that's the whole point. Especially with the Secret Footballer, lots of people think that those interviews have since been arranged. I've still been acquiring interviews off my own back, and the publisher have been fantastic. They're so happy with the work, and it was a bit of a shock that such a publisher come in for you, because you know, I didn't see it coming, but it's just testament to the hard work, really. But one of the things I'm pleased about with the Secret Footballer in particular, Alex, is it was very much a British-based football, and all of a sudden they're confronted with the Canadian striker of the Benfica women's team. They're confronted with the Dutch manager and the Gambian striker of FC Zurich. So it's a bit of a culture shock for some, but as you say, a great mix, and onwards and upwards. Yeah,
and I won't ask you who is the Secret Footballer.
I have no idea. I have no idea. Lots of people think I know. I
have to know, James.
I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea. Lots of people think I know. No idea.
All right, James. Take care and enjoy your weekend.
Same to you. Thanks once again for the invitation, and stay safe, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.